everyone have a seat? Because if there's one thing I despise in this talk, it's inefficient use of resources. I'd like to see... There's one here. There is one wherever... Oh, okay, Chris, there's not one here. I lied. There's a couple of bags over there that are looking very comfortable. All right. I asked a couple of times why at this conference, the RubyConf, is there so many Rubinius and JRuby t-shirts, and there's no Yav t-shirt. This is the talk about why there's no t-shirts for. All right, someone in your business cares about money. I'm not going to assume it's you, but someone does. And as they go about spending that money, they think about, that's me, just in case you looked at the slide and wondered the relationship between that name and me. And you're going to spend it in various different ways. If I had more space, I'd add soft drink. But primarily, it's new stuff. Keeping the stuff running, so the people for keeping it running, and the cost of power and floor space. Even in cloud computing, there's still power and floor space. It's just you can get that from an API. Like, I need a new meter of floor space, please. That's cloud computing. And so then, so I thought I need to visualize this because, that last slide was a bit dense. So here's two ways to visualize it. One is fun things. And not fun things. That's how I look at it. And so my core thinking in everything is how can I not have to spend any money, time, or thought on the non-fun things. Now, so we had, there's a seat here actually, right at the front, if anyone wants to sit in it. No? Okay. You can see us. Just come back here. So you can see the slides. And watch everyone's hilarious reactions to you. So my core thinking is that how much of that non-fun optimizing performance stuff can I get without spending thought, effort, or money on? Because to me, I don't want to ever have to type the letters thread.new because I don't know what happens when I do that. And nor do I really want to ever have to do that because it doesn't fit on the slide. And nor do I ever want to have to do that because it... I have no idea what that does. All I ever wanted to do was just to write code, and it actually became a bit of a problem for me because I have a job at Engine Yard where we look after your app, and we want to help you make the right choices. We want to invest in technologies that are going to be good for you, and I didn't understand. So I came to America. This is the country we're in, and I don't want to leave anything implicit in this talk. I want to very explicit. And I know we're in the South, and it gets a bit questionable. Which all y'all, what's that? That's not a real phrase. So it got kind of really bad, and I was lucky because on payroll is the guys that do Rubinius, who are incredibly clever, the guys that do JRuby, who are incredibly clever, and they tolerate me asking them stupid questions in exchange for being paid. And that's a system that works really well. But not every one of the new incredibly intelligent things worked for me, so I had to con them into coming and telling me more stuff. So I came up with this idea of what was at the time called EmRuby or Event Machine RubyConf. Really, a better name might have been Concurrency RubyConf. Unfortunately, that was... I don't have a joke. I'm going to take a moment. If anyone's got a joke there to give me, I will use it. No? All right. So it was called EmRubyConf. It really is a concurrency conf. And we flew a couple of people in who were not otherwise going to be at RubyConf, a couple of people who couldn't come due to the relative late notice of me coming up with this idea. were very gracious and wrote screencasts, and it was really good. I think we had 50 people in the breakout room. It was packed, and it was really valuable. And if you go to the website, which is EmRubyConf something or other, you will find most of the content. So when it came to getting more performance, I figured I had these options. Now, how do those options work? Well, if you're on App Cloud, you press that button. Yeah, I mean, I thought it's worth pointing out. That's it. And if you do that, you get one of those, and you spend some money. Press it some more times, and you can spend more money. If I'd shown this to some of the business people, they might have asked me to make the dollar sign smaller. But I think the point is valid. So all I want to do is write code. And I wanted to give, so from everything I learned, and that includes I started reading research papers, which was a tremendous reminder of why I never went back to academia. And it's, I think, unrelated to anything. So I went back and looked at some of the slides from the presentations they did. And for all the great things we got out of Ruby on Rails, one of the things we never really thanked David for was for his style of slides, which were quite innovative to me at the time. And if you ever want to go back and look at academic slides, they break every rule that was thus conceived about how not to do slides, how not to do PowerPoint. They're very dense. And anyway, and so what I came up with, I thought, is the most important thing I could do is to not tell you everything. The most important thing I could do is to tell you one thing about 5 times. I don't want you to go away wondering what the point was. I don't want you wondering, I don't want you going away thinking, well, maybe. I don't want you going away wondering if the conference was valuable. I think the message here is perhaps the magic of this conference if you get this. And the T-shirts hopefully convey this. All right, if you're not sure, let the T-shirts communicate to you. Let this talk convey to you. I think this possibly could be the money's worth of the conference if you just do this stuff, this one thing. And if you don't think it's worth it, hopefully you went to some other sessions. So I'm going to go through this. And I'm going to go through this. If from a web perspective, I'm going to talk about these 3 things. The web app being the bit that you do, the other 2 things being things you don't have to do. And that's my favorite part, finding things that I don't have to do that are done for me. All right, quick definition. Event programming. It moves I/O around. Now, I'd like to use the word... No, I can't remember the word anymore. That's the problem when you don't put in a slide. You can't make a joke about why you didn't use that word anymore. Because you forget. There's orchestrate. That's the word I want to use. Event is about orchestrating I/O. The problem is, if you use the word orchestrated, you have to use a smaller font. That's out. I go by the Shane Becker system of slides, and it's big fonts, black and white. You can pay him $12 to learn that message, and I think it's valuable. 1 point. All right, what about threads? What's the point of threads, or what are threads? They're for doing work. And what do? You write code. Okay, some good definitions there. I will use them heavily. Okay, so this is what we're going to shoot for. We're going to do evented first. They're going to wrap your code in an abstraction using threads. That's what I'm going to talk about. And when we do that for web apps, you're going to find that really there's never, for 90% of cases, this is actually a really good solution for you. So what we want to do is use resources better. I mean, we still want to pay engineered money. That's important. But I'd like to see you using your resources better. So let's talk about what our options are for concurrency. We've got process concurrency, which is what we're all using for predominantly now. Threaded concurrency, which we're predominantly not using because we love Yarv, and we were told we're not allowed to do threaded concurrency. And evented concurrency because that's cool, apparently. We don't know what it's for. But goddamn, we're going to use it for everything. So first I want to break it out into the two sort of comparable ones, process versus threaded. If you haven't seen this sort of comparison before, fundamentally, in process concurrency, you get 1 request per process, and it might be, depending on the size of the memory bloat, 50 to 150 meg. Therefore, if you want to have 100 simultaneous requests, you need to make sure you've got 15 gig worth of memory lying around. It's the kernel that does all the work, and if you want process concurrency, because I don't know, you sell memory. Then a couple of web stacks, you might pick a unicorn and passenger, which manage Ruby processes for you. If you want thread concurrency, what you get is that, I've said 2 kilobytes. It depends on the size of your stack and the reuse, but it's a relative number comparable to 150 meg. So every thread is trivial. So now you've got relatively flat size of your process, and you're no longer bound by memory on that machine. You're going to be bound by something else. That's okay. That's what we're looking for. We want performance. We want to get those edges of performance. Still, in a kernel-based, in a native thread-based Ruby implementation, it's going to be orchestrated by the kernel, and Mongrel is a threaded adapter, threaded web server. All right. So this is the core message there, that threads are really, really cheap, and this is a gratuitous logo telling you who the winner is. You may use that logo at your leisure. So this is the point. You're going to wrap your code in threads, and we're going to move any fast evented stuff that we need to do to the front of the request queue. And this idea is a useful abstraction that we want to go to. All right. Now, first I want to educate you on something. Anyone know sign language? What does this stand for? WTF. I think if you're going to be rude, you should do it with 3 fingers. The thing is, you have to do that with a friend. So I hope you will both agree. So the question was, what's all this about? Because if anyone's used to run apps on Mongrel, the last thing we got out of that was concurrency. They invented a thing called Mongrel cluster. And because that was so annoying, they eventually, people invented a unicorn, passenger, and all sorts of things to work around the core root problem of process concurrency. So why would I do that? Specifically, you are going to ask that question, not probably all at the same time, though if I put a slide up, I reckon we have a red-hot chance of you all doing it. So why is it threaded? Or just a quick proof that it's threaded. There's the use of thread.new, and that's the extent of my proof. What do you want, maths? I'm going to attempt to give you this information and communicate this without actually showing you one benchmark, or I think I have 2 graphs, because they're pretty and colourful. Benchmarks are not. So here's some concurrency mathematics brought to you by me. Essentially, if you multiply these things together and all of them are true, you can have thread concurrency. If any of them are false, you're not allowed to have thread concurrency. And you get to spend lots of money on memory, which people will tell you is cheap, but that's a big fat lie. It's expensive, and there's no reason to be bound by memory and have to pay for it. All right, so we've talked about Mongrel, and I'll come back to Mongrel and its future later on. So the problem is, in 2006, whilst Mongrel may have been thread safe, nothing else was, or nothing else supported threads. And fortunately, in 2008, the first effort was put into finally making Rails thread safe. And that was widely ignored. LIFO wrote a post about it, and he was very excited, as anyone that cares about this stuff should be excited. And it's you'll be able to. There's no reference to it; it's irrelevant. But it's a good post, and all he said was that in order to get thread safety, you just uncomment this line. That's it. Talk over. Let's go back. Now, for Sinatra, you have to do something slightly more complex. You have to add this line. Spelling is important. And put that at the top of your program, and I think it works after that. So so we're ticking along. 2008, our maths are getting better. We're getting closer to having sort of out-of-the-box thread concurrency. So then in 2010, that's the right number. Then we got the first production release of 192. Very exciting times. It has native threads in it, which is the good thread. That's what threads are. That's where you let Linus do the work for you. All right? This is how I like to put it. Mats wrote Ruby. Linus did everything else. All right? Linus is really, really clever, as is Mats. Let's let him do some of this work. All right? So we'll call them Linus threads. And unfortunately, sad face is there's an odd concept embedded in the core development practice of MRI, or YARV, both of them, is whilst you can have as many threads as you like, only one of them could do the thing we want to do the most of, which is run Ruby code. Which is an odd feature. But a selling point. You might hear that referred to as the global interpreter lock with a sad face. So that's how you spell that. And I like to call it the grumpy gill because of the sad face. And so here's, as of 2010, thread mathematics not looking so good. But this year, 193 was released. It's very exciting. Sad face still has the gill. We were at Conf, and Matt's is here. Matt Amaniti is doing a talk later on today about the garbage question.
It's not the gill anymore. It's the GVL. DM lock.
No, fine. I'll change my slides. I mean, all right. Thanks, Eric. So one thread at a time, blah, blah, blah. That changes, all right? Take note. I didn't get the correct spelling. Nonetheless, we'll have to come up with a new name for it. And 193 came out, still got the gill. So Matt Amaniti is going to do a talk, and the question that he's asked me to ask out loud in a very prepared manner is, Matt, why don't they remove the gill? To which he will answer, it's just too hard. And whilst you could do it, it's the implications on the C extensions and blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Fix it. Yada, yada, yada. Come on, grow up. So that's reality. So we've got Mongrel's thread, Rails is thread, state but no threads, and bring a friend and communicate that. So you're now convinced you like threads. All right, you're convinced. I appreciate that. Here are your two Ruby implementation options at the moment. The Rubinius master branch, which is the 2.0 coming later on. JRuby is stable in production, used by lots of people. They're your two options. And today, you'd probably pick JRuby. The challenge is you're thinking, JRuby, that's got more letters in its name. That sounds awkward. And that's if you want to take some notes, that's how you get a JRuby-based Rails app. As of Rails 3, if you're using JRuby, the base Rails app is actually ready for JRuby, which is very cool. It has these lines in it, so you don't have to remember those. In fact, I can't. So whenever I need to port those lines across to another app to make it work on JRuby, I actually go and create a new Rails app and copy the lines out. So thread mathematics. Yay! Oh, by the way, the thread safety logo is gratuitous laziness on my behalf because it's not really applicable. I mean, JRuby is not thread safe. It's got threads. The symbol comes from the Rails plugins website. And I thought, that's good enough. Let's move on. So we want threads. And why do we want threads? Because it doesn't use any memory, and we can be performance bound by something else. You might still say, that still sounds so hard. I mean, I don't know how my current thing works. It just does. Leave me alone, Nicholas. I want to go to the other talk, except I can't get out of the room without looking silly. So let me help answer some more questions. How do I actually run JRuby in Rails? Because I'm guessing it's different from whatever I'm doing at the moment, which I don't really understand. But I'm probably not going to understand the answer to this question either. You use Trinidad. There are a bunch of ways to run JRuby, and my point isn't to tell you about them. My point is to tell you about the simplest, best combination one that you can go away today and enjoy the benefits of all this technology. Once you get really clever and it's your turn to talk, you can talk about the others. My goal here isn't to be clever, it's to be funny and to tell you something, what's the next step you can take to get a substantial portion of these benefits. And so our next barrage of text is going to tell you how to use it. Yeah, outside. So you do that inside your Rails app, and you're good to go. You might be thinking, it can't be that easy. I need a demonstration app. There it is. We just have a to-do app, which is kind of nice. You run it under JRuby, and it just works. I don't know. I mean, what else do you want me to do? What else needs to happen before you just go, fine, I'll use JRuby, goddammit, but don't tell anyone. All right. Now, by default, still, for some reason, in fact, I don't know, Aaron, if you could tell me why, why we can't just leave this turned off by default. But currently, that is, you go into production.rb, you'll uncomment that. But if it's commented, or you're in development mode, you'll see a little message about number of runtimes that sort of it maxes out in terms of JRuby runtimes within the JVM process. What you want to do is uncomment that and put #yes at the end. Again, font size as being a limiting factor, I would have said booyah! But I couldn't afford the extra 2 characters. We're under time pressure here. What else? So then you get just the one JRuby runtime within the JVM. By default, the thread limit is 200. It's configurable if you find out what it works best for you. But 200 will do you just fine. And you might be saying now, that was easy! Woohoo! Good, let's go! I mean, what do you want me to do? Come around all your laptops and install it manually? We'll form a queue at the front of the line. Feel sorry for the next speaker. What are all they doing? They're having Dr. Nick install Trinidad. Get a free candy or something. All right, so that's what you get. You get the memory is no longer the performance bound. You don't need to buy gazillions of resources, and Ruby is no longer this expensive beast of a thing that annoys the crap out of you. For everything else except what's in your text editor. And so the best part of all this is that it's just you didn't do anything different. It's your code. So, I mean, okay, you might pick some different gems. You're probably going to have to remove some of that Ruby inline stuff that you thought, this will make my code faster. So you'll have to, depending on how far down your project is. But JRuby has got 1.8 support, 1.9 support, as does Rubinius. So, you can take whatever your legacy app, which, I mean, effectively everyone's code is legacy now, unless you're working on it like that guy. Way to keep current. Not at all offended that he's doing that. No. But that, I mean, the fact that it's the same runtime, you get the same benefits, but you can pick which language set you want is great, because it doesn't mean you have to upgrade your code in order to use a new runtime like we had to do with 1.9.2. We wanted Java, we had to go to 1.9 syntax. Sort of was a limiting factor there. So this is the part we're up to. You still get to write your code, but it's wrapped up in an abstraction of threads that you don't have to worry about. I love that. I mean, every day that I don't type thread.new is a day that my app might work. And I like guarantees like that. So, and if you're not doing, if the problem space you're in is not web apps, then a couple of things are going to change in your life. You might need to start caring about state synchronization, but we'll talk about that. And obviously, Trinidad isn't necessarily going to be, because it's a web stack concept. But the premise is the same. You want an abstraction for your threading. Earlier on, Mike Perman talked about celluloid as an abstraction around state, and Girl Friday, which is an abstraction around background workers, again, so you never have to type the good, awful thread.new. Aaron, should anyone type thread.new? No. Thank you. Pay attention. All right, I'm scared of threads. That's okay. I've got a gift for you. It hasn't come out yet, but it's Dr. Nick's Joy of Concurrency. Probably go straight to Kindle. And you can read in the privacy of your own home without knowing what book you're reading. And it's kind of summarized as store state somewhere else unless it's safe. And the good thing about web apps is you're already doing that. I mean, because you were already spawning lots of processes, you were never assuming that there was a common state that you could store to. So most of our apps, right out of the bat, are good to be thread safe. Rails is thread safe. Sinatra, if you do that very cunning little hash thing, which I don't understand how that works, then you're good. So most web apps are thread safe. You are good to go. All right, just get damn it! You get to do this. Your code wrapped in threads. And there's the stack of technology. I think. Has anyone got a thread of an idea I'm trying to share here? I don't know if it's been a bit vague. I hope I've not danced around the topic too much. All right. You might be thinking, but I came here to hear things about Event Machine. And obviously I've not yet danced too close to that just yet. Events are cool, threads are not. And I haven't heard the use of Node.js once. How can I be serious? So what is evented programming? Now, so basically it's a loop where you say, is there any I.O.? And if there is, you do something with it. Now it's a loop, and the use of an arrow is incongruous with the concept of a loop. But I need you to understand that I don't know how to do a loop in Keynote. So I did an arrow, and instead spent like a minute explaining it. So I'm sorry. Anyway, I need you to visualize that that's a loop. And you might be thinking, great, I understand the loop concept. You really explained that really, really well. Thanks, Nick. But I need a metaphor. I learned from metaphors, and there's been a substantial, you're up to slide 81, and I haven't had one metaphor. I want to fix that problem now. Here's a metaphor for you. Her name's Kathy. I don't know who she is. And nor do I know what she's doing. Okay, so evented. Evented is requests, things coming in, and you do something, and you basically farm them off to something else. I/O, you're orchestrating other people's requests, proxying, and that sort of network service type activity. Really, you don't do it much. People going to Node are starting to write apps that they get the benefit of Node being faster, so they can do slightly more work. But still, you don't really be bound by, you can't really do anything that's actually got real work to do. So when would you use evented? If you want high concurrency, and flat memory usage is really cool. I'll show a graph of that with Nginx versus Apache in a second. And high throughput is kind of the goal. Real time, all that sort of cool stuff. The performance of your evented app is determined by how you treat your I/O loop. So, first concern, you need to know what an I/O loop is. That breaks Dr. Nick's rule of programming. I shouldn't have to know anything. So now that you have to learn something, I should teach it to you. Your evented code shouldn't block, and you probably don't know what that means. How about this? Your evented code shouldn't do anything. So I'm scoping it down just to really, so how much work? It depends. Look, it depends on how much throughput you want. Right? So let's say if you want high throughput, it shouldn't do much at all. 20 milliseconds isn't much in Ruby. So Ruby and evented, you can do a lot of stuff. Ilya and all the guys doing evented, they get some great results. Interesting, and a whole bunch of guys who've done evented are now coming back and saying some interesting things about, I'll come back to threading if it's all right. And I'll show you that in a second. So what can I do with evented? You can move I/O around. Okay, so what's it good for? And so what you're saying is, I don't really need it. Problem is, you do, because obviously we move some I/O around. So it's a question of the abstraction and when we do it and what type of I/O. So if I need that, and this is obviously a competitive thing, because I said it's evented versus threaded, like a throwdown type thing, but I did that because it makes more people turn up. The only way I could have made more people turn up to say the top 10 ways. So I don't need threads. Yes, obviously, you still need threads. We talked thoroughly about that. So I need both. Yes, congratulations on coming to that very grand conclusion. The challenge is, how do I use both and write complex apps? And this is what I think really interesting is, especially if you have a Rails-centric model of the universe, because Rails sort of says, I'm important. Put all your code inside me. Use me as your starting point. And so it's really hard when you're writing a Rails app to do that, and yet keep in mind that Nginx is really part of your universe. It's really hard to remind yourself that you can have other parts, because Rails doesn't really want you to think that way. But it is important to have a bigger perspective of what you're doing. But we want to write complex apps so we can get this abstraction happening. So Chris Anderson said in a comment on some blog, which I failed to reference at all, so I don't care. But he said it in some context. Concurrent apps are easier to reason about when you keep them simple. And Tony said, as a bit of, this is a tweet. I did reference this one. I'm not a complete idiot. So you can go and find out what the real words were. But I'm a bit of fibers wrapped. I think he said async IO, hipster turned fan of proper abstractions on threads. And so Tony did a whole bunch of stuff with evented, the Erlang, RIA stuff. And now he's come around to realizing that that's all well and good, but for a predominant amount of your work, just do it inside threads, which looks like this, just in case you're wondering, or missed the first 20 minutes. And here's some technology you might like to choose. Where can I get that technology? I'm glad you asked. Homebrew and Ruby gems for your Macs. Okay, so let's look at web apps. This happens on occasion. You're going to put some stuff in the cache. Requests come in, either goes to the cache or it misses, and you have to hit the web app. So let's put them in boxes. We'll say that essentially what we're doing is testing if this is an IO-bound problem. Am I just going to serve a file? And this is why this is relevant. This is pretty much all the predominant complexity of web apps is, have I already cached this and can I just serve it? Or do I have to do work? Now, what you don't want to do is have under all circumstances, if someone asks for something that's cached, you want to be able to serve it. You never want to get to the point where something else is blocking it from being able to do that. It's like, I'm sorry I can't show you the homepage right now. I'm deleting someone's account. Isn't quite the right business model. So we needed to couple these things, and this is why we do the invented stuff first. We wrap it out, and why Nginx is such a wonderful technology as to put in front of this whole thing. So this is the invented part, and then our work's wrapped up in threads. And so let's talk about Nginx so that you don't have to write any code to do this. It's as fun as what we do is. If you don't have to write any invented code, then you'll thank me. So what is, relative to Apache, what's interesting about it? And this is old. People have been using and promoting Nginx for a long time, but nonetheless, here's the graph. This is one of the graphs that people used to reference as why Nginx was awesome. Look how much more concurrency you get, how much throughput, raw power. Woof! That would have sounded better if I hadn't had a squeaky voice at the top of that. I always feel I need to have another crack at it. What else? What else is nice about this evented system versus the sort of threaded Apache model? Look at that flat memory usage. Look at it. Pah! Crikey! How awesome. All that memory that I could use for something else. And this is the same idea of what we're trying to achieve. So we want to do that in Nginx and all our work wrapped up in threads, just in case you haven't got the theme of my talk. All right. So only JRuby? That's crazy. What about Mongrel, since I mentioned it before? These things are incongruous with each other. So currently JRuby is what you're going to use. All right. Hopefully we've talked about this at specific length. But I do want to show you a taste of one of the other Ruby implementations that down the track is something, an option you might like to choose. So perhaps one day you do this. You install RVX, and you use it, and you install a concurrent app server. And life is good. So what might this do? Well, Evan said this. That's kind of good. It used all of them. Lovely. Small problem with Mongrel. I don't know if anyone knows, but no one works on it anymore. Doesn't support rack. And that's so bad that now Aaron's talking about something else other than rack. So how bad is Mongrel going to be? So what Evan's actually started working on instead of is he's a fork of Mongrel. In case if you go and look at it, essentially it's a web server built for concurrency. And why would we need to build this? Well, the reason if in JRuby you get the benefit of all the web servers that already exist. So Trinidad is a wrapper for Tomcat. But back in the universe that Rubinius and JRuby live in, we don't have one that's both working and supports concurrency. So essentially it's a fork of Mongrel. If you don't believe me, then look at the README, which says that it's still called Mongrel. But that's underway. So today you're going to choose Trinidad. You're going to install Trinidad. You're going to change some of your gems, and you're going to deploy with Trinidad. And you're going to say, thank you, Nicholas. I'm glad I came here to talk. It was both interesting, funny, and educational. And I appreciate that about the time that we spent together. And You're not going to fit that on a tweet, so you're going to do that in sign writing across the sky. That'll be awesome. And so in the future, then the Puma might be your option, Rubinius, and you're thinking, but Nick, where can I have this hosted? Gratuitously sell me something. Not a problem. More gratuitous sell. I would love to work with some of you. I can't be specific. I don't know you all. So let's do it this way. You come and ask Nick, can I work with you? And then we'll talk. I would love that. Obviously, you get to hang out with these guys. They're all around the country. And obviously, the work we do is wonderfully fascinating, hard, and important. So, summary. Just in case you're new or you have a short memory. You want to be happy. I think what we should do is let me be the surly one and you be the happy ones. All right? So you want to be happy. You want to write your code, but you want performance. You're going to wrap in an abstraction of threads that's not going to touch your life. No, thread.new for you, just happy times. And you want to wrap it in threads, and you want to move the, depending on the type of project you're working on, where there's a known sort of I/O at the start of request, move that to the front. And here, for your glory, for your educational benefits, is the money shot. Please use these things, and you'll have a happy life. Thank you very much. Elapsed time, 19 minutes. Seriously? I went through 100 and something slides. That can't be right. It's not. Let's ignore it. Questions? You have a hand and it's raised. Go.
So one concern me and I imagine a bunch of other people have about going to a threaded model is if you use external gems and they're not necessarily thread safe, you have no quick way of finding out, oh, this isn't thread safe, except you all of a sudden get random breaks in production 5 weeks later.
That's an excellent question. Let me reference something else. Oh, is that my thing? Wow. Can you see that? Cool. All right, let's go. One of those tabs, Rails, plugins, .org. There we go. Booyah! Fuck. But you can imagine that works. Anyway, so that site includes an attempt to both help gem authors to document their commitment to the fact that their gem is both thread safe and all works on JRuby. Travis.io answers does it work in JRuby? If you're going to put your gem up on Travis and have the CI done there, you can add a file to say what rubies you want it tested against. The thread safe is always going to be difficult, but at least this is a starting point.
I guess to that, can you give advice on how to make your gems thread safe? A lot of people would need to know how to begin with that.
Actually, I'm going to defer. Aaron, you want to answer that? Anyone? Thread safe.
Don't share data.
Don't mutate data.
Yeah, don't mutate data or...
Don't create data. Don't do I/O.
Don't change anything.
Yeah. The world is perfect as it is. Stop writing code. Move on with yourselves. Sorry. That's the broad scope of my low-level, high-level talk on yes, ensuring the libraries of threads is important. But this magnificent site that says unable to connect, which is a concern.
Do you have anything about concurrency for non-web apps, something similar to maybe like OpenMP for C, where you kind of just ignore the fact that you're actually running threads in the background?
So then the sort of like an actor model of abstraction your concurrency away there. Sorry. So as Mike Perrin gave a talk on this before, which is why he did the talk involving technical things, and I did the talk involving whatever I talked about. Celluloid is an interesting gem. Runs in JRuby, and it's a nice syntax, and each object runs in its own thread that involves that. You include that module.
I forget, but did you ever actually mention anything about invented IO?
All right, yeah, that's a good point. No. If you do run, the standard web app stack for doing embedded apps is going to be thin. Run that behind Nginx. works a treat. But I don't want to tell you to do that.
Well, that was all a gimmick to get us in this room.
Next question.
You had a slide that said in the future we'll be able to use Rubinius. When is the future?
Tomorrow onwards? What? Is that a trick question? No, there are people using Rubinius Edge, like so master. So Rubinius 2 work, which was formerly known as Hydra, and then became the 2.0 branch, and now that's been merged in, is in its final months. I mean, it's got some unrelated to the threading, the gill-less behavior. It's also got the 1.9 support and Windows, which is unrelated to each other. So we've got to tie those three main things off as part of that, get installers, etc. So for anyone that wants to start asking me for dates, I will start asking you for dates for your projects. No, look, I apologize for not spending more time discussing vendor. I just don't want to confuse it like one core conversation. Yeah. I don't do kidding. Fight! All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.